As a writer, one of the top 5 pieces of advice I hear most often repeated is, always have a point. This applies to just about anything you're writing, whether it's a fight scene or a section of plot, or just a character interaction. You should always have a point. Now, the tricky part comes in actually deciding what this point is, because it's easy to make it something like it looks cool, and I want it in there. That's fine, and it can work, but then you'll have to really make it look cool, or else you risk being boring. Today I want to talk about fight scenes specifically, because I crave violence, and also have been watching The Old Guard religiously, so you all 3 people who watch my videos get to put up with that fact. Quick warning. This video contains very violent footage as well as minor spoilers for Kingsman, both 1 and 2, The Old Guard, movie and I guess comics. Only very minor though. Oh, and Batman v Superman. Also, this is all my objective opinion, and as always, I make mistakes. I'm literally a bird. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So first what I'm going to do is show you this fight scene from Batman v Superman, a movie that came out in 2016 and was directed by Zack Snyder. I'd like to point out I don't have anything really against him or this movie so much. I just think it was boring, and particularly this fight scene, which is supposed to be tense and climactic. Anyways. So there's a couple of things to go over. Number 1. When I watched this the first time I fell asleep. Now, I'm possibly a bit biased since I'm notoriously sleep deprived, and my couch is horrifically comfortable. So, I watched the movie again, this time with my father who's a sucker for these kinds of movies, and also has bad taste. Even he thought it was boring. So what's wrong with it? There's action, there's drama, it's well shot, it looks cool. Why is it so boring? There's a couple of reasons, but let's start by breaking down the most basic elements of this fight scene. We have 1. 2 people fighting. 2. One is significantly stronger than the other, and underestimates their opponent in the beginning, only to be proven wrong about halfway through the battle, at which point badass mode is activated, and they end the fight. 3. The fight ends with both opponents coming to a truce of sorts, where the characters become closer to being allies. Alright, that seems pretty tame. I wonder if there's a fight scene out there with these same bare-bones elements that I could compare it to. Oh wait, The Old Guard is a 2020 movie directed by Gina Prince Bywood in which a group of immortal people act as warriors protecting the rest of humankind. It's brilliant, you should go watch it right now. But all you need to know for this scene is that Andy, played by Charlize Theron, is centuries and centuries old. She has been fighting for her whole life, and is literally the most baddest person on the planet. Niall, played by Kiki Lane, is a Marine currently stationed in Afghanistan when a mission goes wrong, and she ends up dead for a few hours. She wakes up after an injury that should have killed her healed miraculously, only to be kidnapped by Andy, who tells her she's an immortal. The scene takes place a little while after Niall's kidnapping, in which she tries to get the upper hand on Andy in order to escape.
As I told the pilots, play dead. You really want to do this, kid? We're done. I said we're done.
Sick, right? Okay, so in both these cases you have those bare bones we were talking about. The fights are structurally the same thing, except this fight is actually entertaining to watch. Why question mark? It's because there's a point, a good point. What would you say the Batman v Superman fight is supposed to achieve? The end makes it clear that it's supposed to further Batman and Superman on their journey towards allyship. Except, what part of the battle does that? This battle tells us a few things, like how Bruce is stubborn, and angry, and smart, and has gadgets. It tells us that Superman is strong. Under strong, you could say that the fight is about characterization. Except if that's the case, why is it put so far into the movie? Characterization comes at the beginning, when you introduce your characters, and then later on you can recharacterize your characters when they grow or evolve. But here Bruce hasn't evolved at all, except that now he's acting on his anger, which we already knew he wanted to do. And with Superman, it's the same thing. This fight scene tells us nothing new about either of them, except that apparently they care that they share a mama's name. Now, with the old guard scene, it takes place right at the beginning of the movie, and the point of it is to introduce us to Andy and Niall's dynamic. It also further characterizes Andy, who, until this point, has been mostly just stoic and depressed. The point is characterization, and so we remain interested in the scene because we're learning about the characters. See? Okay, let's go a little bit deeper into this scene. First of all, look at how Andy is framed. Through the beginning she's shot at a low angle, giving us the impression she's above Niall. The camera also hides behind Andy, not going behind Niall until about halfway through, when Niall draws blood and Andy realizes she might actually have some skills. Then the angles change, they're shown more on even footing, and the camera hides behind Niall almost as much as Andy. It isn't until the end of the fight, when the camera goes back to showing Andy from low angles and Niall from high ones, after when Andy finishes the fight. This all gives us, as viewers, a very subtle nudge towards the idea that Andy is imposing, which she is. But then when the angles change, putting them on closer to even footing, that subconscious nudge points us in a new direction. Andy is seeing Niall as someone who could become her equal. You can see her crack a smile in the fight all the times Niall surprises her and gets the other hand. She's enjoying herself. Then there's also the fact that Andy is very clearly holding back. She keeps catching Niall, and these locks obviously set up to break Niall's arm or snap her neck, but she doesn't. She either lets go or lets Niall break free. It isn't until the end of the fight, when she's shown as imposing again, that she actually finishes those moves she was holding back on, finishing the fight with 3 moves. The scene just tells us so much about both of them. Niall is persistent, willful, strong. Andy is powerful, but she's got a soft side. This one fight sets up exactly how their dynamic will be for the rest of the movie. It's telling us about them. And now when we go back to the Batman v Superman fight, everything this fight tells us we already know. It's riding on the high of two big superheroes duking it out, and that only gets you so far. Now, I can hear some of you crying, but what about Kingsman? And listen to me, that is how you do action just for action's sake. That's badassery and gore, and just balls out craziness, just because it looks cool. But arguably the most horrific and cool scene in either of the movies is the quote-unquote Freebird scene, also known as the church scene, in which the villain, Samuel L. Jackson, tests out his evil South Dakota cards and sends the whole church into a fighting frenzy, in which there happens to be a special agent who's also affected. The carnage is awesome. It's all done in basically one shot, and it just looks amazing and horrific. However, there is a point to that scene, and it's this, right here. The point of this scene is to show just how terrible this villain's plan is, the chaos and destruction he could make other people cause. So, yeah, this scene doesn't have much of a point other than to kill the big bad, and look sick as fuck while doing it, but the most action-packed scene does have a solid point. Also, the Kingsmen are just better movies than anything Batman v Superman. Ahem, so, back to my original question. What exactly makes an action scene boring? Pointlessness. Also just action for action's sake. When writing, everything you do should have some kind of a point. It doesn't matter if it's moving your character across a room or establishing important foreshadowing for a future twist. You need to have purpose. The nice thing is, if you're writing or creating or doing just about anything simply because you enjoy doing it, this comes naturally. The problem comes when you make a movie or write a scene or really anything just because you think someone else will like it more. That's actually a big reason why sequels fall flat so much. They become cash grabs, and people forget that the thing that made the original product so enjoyed is the genuine care that was originally put into it. I'm getting sappy. I guess what I'm trying to say is, care about what you make and your chances of being boring go down exponentially.